We always talk about right now the U.S. tariffs on metal imports, but we also forget that the U.S. has imposed tariffs on washing machines, solar panels. Do we have now a dollar figure of what the cost would be on Asia, developing Asia?
So for Asia, obviously everybody's watching what's happening in the States. The costs right now, the prospectus is pretty good. We had a great year in terms of trade last year. The trade was up 5% overall in Asia, in developing Asia, and we're expecting a couple of good years ahead if things get not too badly disrailed. On the energy front, we see I'd like to turn it around a little bit and just say that there's some enormous opportunities for the U.S. in a rapidly changing landscape in Asia for energy trade and energy imports. And one of those is on the liquefied natural gas front, LNG, where particularly China, but the whole of Asia is now opening up for liquefied natural gas imports. And America is extremely well placed to profit from that, to export an enormous amount from new facilities that have been constructed here in the States.
We are expecting China to become the largest buyer of U.S. LNG just next year. But what will be the impact if you get a trade war and these tariffs imposed on the energy sector?
Right now, of course, the Chinese are looking at what tariffs coming their way, and have looked at a whole bunch of retaliatory tariffs. They haven't included LNG in those. We'll see how that goes looking forward. But there's an enormous amount of self-interest on both sides here. China is rapidly moving out of coal-fired power and imports of coal. They're looking to import gas. America has a fantastic gas product to offer at a great price. Right now, China is America's third largest importer of LNG, but that very quickly we expect China to be the biggest potential importer. And that positioning is great for the U.S., and we'd like to see more of that move. And it's not just China, by the way. I mean, we've been supporting financing for LNG imports and LNG import projects in places like Bangladesh, in Pakistan. We're looking at Sri Lanka. Back home where I live in the Philippines, they're looking to import LNG, and a big chunk of that could come from the U.S.
Michael, quite apart from what tariffs are ultimately imposed or not imposed, businesses, when they choose to invest, typically like to know what the rules are going to be. Are you seeing a slowdown on investment in new projects just because of the uncertainty until it all gets sorted out?
So we are beginning to see a little bit of a slowdown or a bit of hesitation, and people want to see what the policies are going to be going forward. And I'm talking here specifically about LNG, but generally. And I think from the U.S. perspective, it's also important to note that the U.S. is a very important game in town in terms of gas exports, but it's not the only one. Many countries around the world, and particularly in Asia, are ramping up as well. So countries like China do have other options, but at the same time, America has extremely competitively priced gas. It has a lot of it, and all things being equal, the Chinese would love to increase the amount of gas they bring in from the U.S.
Michael, moving even beyond liquefied natural gas, what sectors do you see particular sensitivity in terms of making investments because of the uncertainty? Are there some areas, some products, some projects that are more vulnerable than others?
Definitely a big area of growth. So energy is, let me put it in numbers. So we figure that in Asia, over the next few years, annually, there's going to need to be about 1.7 trillion of infrastructure spend. That's in developing Asia alone. More than half of that's going to be for energy and power-related investment. And so a big focus of the development of Asia is going to be on energy imports and on producing more power. That's where a lot of the opportunities are going to be. That's where the possibility for an enormous amount of trade with the states are going to be. So obviously, anything that blocks that trade, blocks investments, particularly in renewables, solar, wind across Asia. And again, an area where the U.S. has done a lot and has a lot of potential for further investment. That is obviously going to be potentially disruptive, but hopefully we're not going to see that.